Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. Pretty late on a Monday, so I'll make this a short one. But this is an insight that has been becoming stronger as of late, and is this notion of how in the beginning of our meditation journey, we believe that we should not get distracted, and in fact that creates a kind of a notion in certain people that say, well, I can't meditate, or I'm not good at meditating because I get distracted. There's plenty of information about this and dispelling this kind of myth out there. First of all, because meditation is your fundamental nature, so being good at it is not exactly something that is up for questioning. But when we are doing concentration training, it's definitely going to be the case that we're going to get distracted a lot. And that's going to seem as a hindrance to our practice. One of the first things to understand is that this is what's supposed to happen, and that our exercise, or that our intent should be about bringing the mind back. And in fact, the more we get distracted and the more we bring our mind back, that's what starts to grow that capacity to notice that we're distracted and to bring the mind to the point of focus that we're trying to settle into. Now that's a good start. Doing that for a while will definitely bring benefits. There comes, however, a point in which the depth of the exploration needs to go further, because we come to realize that the distractions of the mind, the kind of fantasies that we linger around, or the kind of places in memory to which we depart, have a source elsewhere. They don't have their source in the thinking mind. They in fact have their source in the emotional body. So I always like to compare this to a glass of sparkling water. And when I was a kid, I was always fascinated with sparkling water because I was always obsessed with trying to find out where the bubbles were coming from. So the bubbles came to the surface, and that's the obvious part. But where were they appearing from? And I could never figure that out, right? I could obviously didn't have the scientific knowledge, and even now, if somebody explains this to me, I would probably not totally understand it. But a kind of chemical or physical reaction takes place somewhere in the fluid, and out of that spot, bubbles are born. What makes that place different than the one next to it, I don't know. And but I always thought that little source was very, very special. It was very significant because out of nowhere, in that source, bubbles would appear. And when we come to learn that the thoughts in the mind are the bubbles that come to the surface, and when we've learned to sort of observe those and bring our mind back to the present moment, or the object of meditation, or whatever it is that your practice is about, after a while you notice that the same thoughts recur. It's rumination on certain themes, and what you come to notice is that those themes that come up are offerings of your mind. Rather than being problematic or distracting, which was the first sort of hurdle to get through, and rather than being just sort of normal noise that keeps coming up all the time, which was the second hurdle. The third, these are not official stages, but let's say that the phase that I'm, or rather the instance that I'm trying to explain now, is the one where we go, okay, so if they are not distractions and they're not a nuisance, what the hell are they? And where are they coming from? That leads our exploration into the emotional body and the sense of self, mainly the sense of self. So the whole, who am I? Or who is it that's thinking these thoughts? As we point our attention into the source of the thought, we're going to come across the sense of self, which is a kind of membrane of resistance against feeling something that is emotionally not resolved. And that's where our task sits. But because that emotion is being either repressed or consciously suppressed, we're going to have to do enough sitting with the sense of self that's resisting the emotion and becoming really, really well acquainted with it. And in doing that, the dissonance is going to become stronger. And the closer we get to our sense of self, the closer we are in touch with that membrane, which has you could see that membrane as having awareness, our awareness on one side, and the unconscious emotion on the other. And if awareness touches the membrane, the membrane doesn't really even exist. The membrane is not a physical thing. It's a departure from awareness in another direction. Yeah, it's a kind of bending of the light in the way that a black hole would bend light, let's say. So if we keep our awareness on the membrane itself, we start to permeate it, because we start to see that it's made up of resistance and distraction. And in allowing that to be the case with full awareness, we come to eventually notice that membrane is very, very thin, and we start to come in touch with the discomfort that's on the other side of that membrane, or that supposed membrane. So that sitting with, having our focus of awareness sit with the apparent sense of self from which thoughts are springing, or to whom thoughts are occurring, eventually gets us in touch with the unresolved emotion that is triggering the thoughts. That's the invisible source from which the fizzy bubbles are springing. And we ought to become, as I was as a child, truly curious and rather obsessed with those little sources of bubbles. Because so long as that source is not resolved, you can learn to dance with thoughts and observe them and, be okay with them. But the fact that they're hitting you all the time means that something is just not, it's almost like something's not digested, and you keep kind of getting sort of heartburn and, indigestion from it, right? It's almost like an emotional indigestion. So you want to digest this, but in order to digest it, you need to almost sort of bring it back and chew it properly, and then swallow it again. And that bringing back is going to be very uncomfortable. Nevertheless, this is a kind of, slightly more advanced view of how to use thought. So at first you're trying to get rid of it. When you start meditating, you realize that you can't do that. So then you allow it, and then place your attention elsewhere. And in the end, not only do you allow it, but you actually start to actively trace it. So you actually actively begin using it for real resolution of what that train of thought and that rumination is all about. And I have noticed that no matter how much practice you get doing that and resolving it, unconscious resistance is still difficult to see through, and it is still difficult to accept. It's difficult to see through because it's just hiding itself, right? And it is hiding itself behind your very reluctance to want to see, because the unconscious resistance is unconsciously not wanting to feel pain. You're protecting yourself against pain that you believe is going to harm you. You do this enough times, you'll get better at it. But in my experience until now, I have not yet come across an instance in which I very gung-ho go, you know what, this one's an easy one. It just hasn't happened. It's always something that feels utterly ominous, confronting, and something which threatens my entire way of life, type of thing. So I don't know. I guess that's just the nature of mind. Mind is protector. It protects itself from things that threaten to expose, deep shame, or the kind of things that were put in place precisely to dampen these affects. So that's today's thought, and as always, I'm curious to see what you guys make of this idea. So if you have any thoughts, share them in the comment section. I lately don't respond to comments a lot. I always give them a little heart because I do read them. I read every single comment every time. But I've found myself short of time as of late, so I don't always get the chance to respond. But I do read them, and I'm very appreciative of them. So thanks, keep helping me keep the channel alive is very motivating. And I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.